All right.
Okay, so we're on to a new topic.
Hello.
HRV, you are probably more well versed in it. And the reason I bring it up is because I have this fun little watch that I'll wear to sleep. I know there's so many things with wearables and who's tracking you and whatnot, but I'm curious for myself. And some things that I observed and now I have questions in my head about my when I skip dinner, when I fast during dinner, and I allow my blood sugar and insulin to drop. So therefore my ketones can come up more. My heart rate drops to like 51 and my HRV jumps up to 83. And I find that I don't need as much deep sleep and I feel great. And I don't think it's a cortisol high. It's a normal, I feel good. And when I have carbs, or if I have too many carbs, those numbers absolutely reverse.
You get a
And
flip.
sometimes I require more deep sleep. So my thought process is, we do all these standard blood tests based on an omnivorous diet or whoever is in the room, and we create these standards. I'm wondering the same thing about wavelengths and or brain waves and what is required and not required. Have these standards been created on people who have insulin problems? So it looks like we need more deep sleep when in reality we don't need as much deep sleep because there's not as much to repair because we're able to do it throughout the day. So that's kind of been my thought process. I watch those numbers flip universally for myself based on diet.
It-
So let's talk
that's a
about what is,
lot.
yes.
That's a
So let's
lot.
just break down what
So,
HRV is first.
so number one, yeah, where do you even begin? Okay, yeah, everybody's got wearables and everybody's got like an Apple Watch or an Aura Ring or whatever that gives
And
them a
even if
number.
they're not accurate, if you're doing it all the time, they're still the same for you, whatever you're working.
Yeah, the way HRV should traditionally be done, and I will do my best to paraphrase one of my professors in the masters, Mike T. Nelson, who is the godfather of HRV research. So I can
Okay.
say I've taken some of this training directly from, the fire hose of the guy who's producing the research on it.
Okay.
Dr. Nelson is a big fan of this as a biomarker. Again, we're talking a lot in our podcast days about different biomarkers. And what's really cool is people are using these things now quite regularly. So HRV, what it's going to do is it's going to give you a number. It basically tracks the variability in your heart rate from beat to beat over a certain period of time.
Hmm.
It uses a whole set of equations that the device does for you,
Hmm.
and it gives you a number between 1 and 100. Traditionally, what that means is at 100, you are maximally super duper parasympathetically dominant and super duper adaptable. If your HRV is 1, you're probably dead.
Hmm. Hmm. I haven't
So
had that, thank God.
basically, yeah, I don't think you see them go to like 1 in the clinical setting.
No,
Uh,
no.
but you'll see a lot of people. And the bodybuilding coaching team that I use likes to use HRV as one of their biomarkers for their clients because they're kind of tracking why aren't you losing fat like you should be? What does your HRV look like? They'll tailor training based upon what somebody's
And they
HRV
do more
response is.
carb based, right? So they're still more
Yeah,
and
the
higher
the diet
insulin based. So,
the diet traditionally is higher
mhm.
carbohydrate, yes. So and interestingly, another biomarker that I use in my life, I have a CPAP machine and it measures my apnea hypopnea index every night.
Yep, somebody
And you
told me.
talked about that. Yeah, when I've had a lot of carbs close to bedtime, I have a higher number of apnea hypopnea events than if I haven't. And
Hmm.
since I have changed my diet, so when I'm working with this team, I have a higher AHI overall than I did when I was eating low carb.
Hmm. That's why I'm
So
curious in your next bout, if you do it ketogenic way, if that will be
yeah.
different.
If I decide I'm going to do another bodybuilding
Yeah.
show, that's the plan. I'm going to talk to Howard, my coach Howard Hartnett, who I give a ton of credit to. He's a very good guide.
Hmm.
It's just that this is kind of the standard plan that
Right.
people do for
So
this, and
it still goes to my
manipulated.
viewpoint is this is from an angle of
Yeah,
this omnivorous diet and insulin,
yeah,
not taking that into account. So,
yeah.
okay.
And
So
and
your
the thing with
sleep.
bodybuilding too is manipulating insulin levels is one of the things that you do to build muscle and lose fat going into a show. So that isn't to say this is for me not a long-term lifestyle. This is a goal that I've got for the next 13, 14 weeks that I'll deviate back
I've
away from for my long term.
I've also heard that insulin really makes you retain water in the muscle is why it's used, not because it necessarily makes everything
Yeah.
build, but I could also go with the building aspect because when you spike that insulin, you are stimulating that mTOR, but you're stimulating it
Ah,
everywhere in your
yep.
bones, in your organs, in your fat. Whereas
Insulin.
if you stimulate mTOR either by specific exercise, strength training, or by leucine, which is amino acid and protein, without the insulin spike, you actually just stimulate mTOR in muscle.
Yeah.
So, they talk about mTOR with this cancer and whatnot because this growth, right? mTOR, mammalian
It's an anabolic.
activation. I can't think of it, but um, so when you have cancer, a lot of it's a metabolic disease. We know this. Only 5% are genetic. You go to the American Cancer Society, that's what it says.
Yeah.
And so it's metabolic and it stimulates this mTOR. And if we're spiking insulin all day, mTOR is spiked everywhere. Whereas if you are
Yeah.
spiking, again, mTOR with leucine and not spiking insulin or stimulating the muscle, you're going to get
Yeah.
that activation just in the muscle. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, 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 that's totally fine. But the to go back to what we're looking at with our HRV is a number between 1 and 100. And what you're saying is that when you are in a fasted state or in a low insulin state, you're
Hmm.
seeing your HRV numbers climb.
Hmm.
And you're also saying that, and again, talking about this mTOR mechanism that is related to insulin, among other things, it tends, what you're saying, I think what I'm hearing is you're saying that insulin is a driver of inflammatory processes.
Yes.
So the thought process is
Like too
because
much, too long, and so we still need insulin, but yes.
yeah, what you're saying is if I've got a little more resistance to insulin and I need to produce more insulin or things like that, what's happening is I am required to have more deep sleep to get the brain to a state of restfulness, to have a cortisol rhythm that is in balance, and so on and so forth. And I think that's one of the reasons why this team kind of tracks those biomarkers with their clients because they may do some things to manipulate the variables. And yeah, at the very end, we'll pull carbs out almost completely so that the water is gone everywhere,
Mhm.
and then they'll do something to refeed it so it just goes back to the muscle.
Yeah.
Um, there's ways to, I mean, that since Arnold Schwarzenegger's days and before, there's ways to manipulate those variables that
Hmm.
make people look really good on stage.
Yeah.
Granted, most people will tell you who've done these
They are
bodybuilding shows, they don't
trash.
feel very good
Yes.
until after the show's over.
Yeah. So the
And that's
HRV
why
is really the ability of your body to contract and relax. It's that ability to go between the two.
it's a flexibility measure of the parasympathetic system and adaptability. Yeah, it's very much a parasympathetic measure in my opinion. Granted, you're measuring both of these things,
Hmm.
and we'll get into that in a little bit. But that's to get people up to speed. That's what you're tracking, and the best way to do this. And again, this is Mike T. Nelson, the godfather of HRV. First thing in the morning, maybe after a void, if you have to get up and go to the bathroom first thing, you
Hmm.
sit for 5 minutes, you track your HRV, you write it down. That's your number for the day. I don't care what your HRV is driving down the highway
Hmm.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon if you get up at 6 in the morning. I
Yeah.
care about what it is morning after morning after morning. I'm going to track that as a trend over a
Hmm.
period of time. And
Are
again, you
you
can
just
apply
does he care if
statistical methods.
it's an app on the phone? Because I have an app where I can just,
Yeah.
put my finger over it.
You can do
So
the
you
finger HRV. Yeah,
okay.
we had that one with one
Hmm.
of our Carrick seminars. Yeah. But
Yeah.
there's a million ways you can track it. You can have the wearable, but it'll track it all day long for you. But that isn't a reliable measure unless you're doing it the way Dr. Nelson describes in
So this HRV is
myriad
only at
podcasts
night.
that he's been on.
This
What's
HRV
that?
is only at night while I sleep.
Oh, okay. So it's tracking it overnight. And
Yeah.
again, I would be interested to see what your first thing in the morning measurement looks like after that
Okay.
over time, compared carb versus no carb night, because
Hmm.
that's the way you traditionally should track it.
Hmm.
Is the first thing in the morning upon waking.
I have done it so much that I think it's pretty plastic
Yeah.
in what it is. I've gone up and down in that deep sleep. It's hot right now. I don't have air conditioning, so I have a fan blowing on me, and it's hot, muggy here right now. So I never sleep as well. So my based on these wearables, my sleep in the summer is the deep sleep is usually not as good. So
Well, and
I,
I would expect that the heat will actually impact your HRV negatively as well.
yeah, but my HRV last night I think was like 83 or 86
So it was still pretty good, even though it's
because
hot. And
I'm,
that's the thing where you go, maybe this manipulation on my insulin levels makes me hardened, which was a topic we talked about prior, hardening our system to
mhm.
a stressor because the heat is very much a stressor of the sympathetic nervous system and a driver of it. And if you don't have a good sympathetic nervous system, which is a lot of our TBI patients, long COVID
Mhm.
patients, et
Pass
cetera,
out
et cetera,
vasovagal patients, I think are usually, I'm
very
just,
heat intolerant.
they're, yes, and sympathetic weak is how I would describe it, you know?
Well, and that's exactly it. Those are the type of patients you see, like, we talked about before, where the pupils constrict and they don't redilate like they're supposed to.
Hmm.
And they get these traditional treatments. And these are patients, and this is kind of the point I wanted to make about HRV. These are the type of patients that are going to have really good HRV numbers, like really, really high. And they're going to come in and tell you, my HRV was 92
I see
last
what you're
night. And
saying.
they're
Yeah.
barely going to be able to get out of bed because they feel so crappy. But
Yeah.
you go, but your HRV is 92, and these trainers are going to be like, you should be training really hard in this state. And these people are like, I can't walk and chew gum at the same time
Yeah.
because they're so autonomically dysregulated. And these are the type of phenotypes that Professor Carrick has always said, these are the ones you really need to be careful with.
Yeah.
These are the people who are going to have strokes from doing menial activities if they don't do something about it because they can't get enough dilation in their
Mhm.
brain. So what happens is the blood vessels constrict and you have an infarct or an event or a mini stroke or a TIA or a migraine or these kind of things. So using the HRV alone as a biomarker is great, but that's the soapbox that I have on it.
Yeah. Is
A
you have
good
to look
HRV
both.
isn't necessarily a good
It's kind of,
patient.
it goes along the same lines of us talking about HR or vagus nerve stimulation.
Everything else,
Not
yeah, I
universally
wouldn't.
good for people. Definitely not on this, on the case that you were talking about. Absolutely not.
Very few therapies are good for everybody all the time.
Yeah.
There aren't a
In my
lot of
case,
things.
I do think that for me, because I've done it so much, I do so much better when I have I do well with fasting personally.
Well, and the thing I think for you too is to consider we're talking, in those instances about people who've had a traumatic brain injury,
Exactly.
long COVID, some type of damage to those white matter pathways
Yep.
that integrate the frontal lobe, particularly that dorsolateral and ventromedial prefrontal cortex with the locus ceruleus that is the driver of sympathetic nervous system activity. People that have had some damage in those pathways
Mhm.
are people that we don't necessarily want to see a great HRV on, at least initially until we've rehabbed them.
Yeah.
I've seen that one of the TBI patients that I had that made me take the TBI fellowship, I'd been working with her
Yes,
and
it's
it
how it
was
was for me.
wonderful.
Yep.
You had somebody you're like, I got to learn more, and that was one of the things we did with her because back in the day, HRV was one of the only autonomic biomarkers you could have people do at home.
Okay.
So we tracked her HRV and she was like that. She'd have HRVs in the high 80s or the 90s and she was really, really profoundly disabled on those days.
Hmm.
And when she'd come in the 50s and 60s, she could kick ass. She could get through, a week of work and kind of go, I worked 40 hours and I feel really good. And it's like, but your HRV is
Yeah.
52 and you should be
Yeah.
like doing nothing. And as I got into the pupillometry on her and started to see what was happening, it
Hmm.
made sense to me. She had that kind of phenotype.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot more in that community.
You also talked about the grip strength test also,
Yeah.
which
That
for
was
somebody who
another,
doesn't maybe have a pupillometry,
yeah,
using the
there you go.
dynamometer, having them squeeze as hard as they can, figuring out what 30% is, right? I just want to walk it through because I've only done it a few times. Uh, get it to the 30%, and then they have to consistently, mine turns off even as they're holding it. So I'm like, I can't, I have a tough time with that 30%. So it depends on the machine you get. Don't get a digital one. Get one that has
Well,
a,
I got the fire engine red, old
okay.
school dynamometer. Yeah.
Okay. So you go to the
It's really
30%.
cool. It's
Yeah.
fire engine red. It's really neat. Yeah.
You
Um,
take blood pressure. You take the blood pressure to begin with. You have them hold it, and you take the blood pressure on the minute every 5 minutes. And there
that's
should
got it.
be a change, right, of 20
So,
systolic.
so yeah, this is what's great. I've done a podcast on this, and I talked about this on another podcast. It's really cool. Like I don't know
We'll
how
do
I
it on this
became the
podcast.
I don't know how I became the guy on this test. It's really interesting. So the researchers likened this to carrying like 3 bags of groceries up 4 flights of stairs. So it's a challenge to the autonomic nervous system, right?
Okay.
Basically, if I've got sympathetic nervous system activity sufficient for physical activity, I should increase my blood pressure as I'm exerting myself.
Hmm.
Just the way the mechanism should work for sure. This is
Okay.
like as good as
So over
almost
those
as good as
five
having a
minutes.
continuous blood pressure monitor. So yeah, I'm going to get a baseline blood pressure on somebody,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to test their maximal grip
Hmm.
because I need to know what your max is. And you give them 3 trials because, people like try harder after they see that they sucked the first time. They
Hmm.
didn't, but they think they did. So I should get 160. It's like, maybe not.
Yeah.
And then yeah, you sustain that for 30% of max grip for 5 minutes. Every minute I'm checking the blood pressure on the opposite arm. And what should happen is over time, depending on the research that you read, it should increase the diastolic number is the biomarker that is the clinically relevant one.
Okay.
Systolic can be all over the place. The
Yep.
diastolic should raise between 16 and 20 millimeters of mercury within 3 minutes.
Okay.
Ideally, within 5 minutes is clinically normal, but
Hmm.
within 3 minutes is ideal.
Hmm.
And what a lot of times people will do is you'll hit that benchmark in 3 minutes and you'll stop the test.
Hmm.
Sustain. I want to see that be able to reach that biomarker and then sustain it for that next 2 minutes. Because you'll see people all the time, and you see it with pupillary waveforms or things like that. They get to the marker and then they crap out.
So for someone who doesn't have the pupillary marker, which I still
A lot
have
of people
gotten yet,
don't.
but love
Yeah.
it,
And it's hard. Yeah, it's really hard.
they can
So
do, if you have someone who comes in with a high HRV and they fail this test, the high HRV may not be
it might not be an
a good
ideal
sign.
biomarker. So if I'm doing that 5 minute hand grip test, which again, the equipment for that, it's relatively inexpensive. If you're a clinician, should have a sphygmometer by now
Mhm.
and a stethoscope.
Yep, yep.
If you sold it after chiropractic college, buy another one. If you're listening to this podcast, odds are good you've probably got it. The dynamometer, yeah, you can get the cheap one off of Amazon or Temu or
Mine
whatever.
is digital. Oh, it's under my computer right here.
A lot of those,
But the
and I've had two or
I
three of
can't
those
hold
crap
it.
out
It
on me.
turns off.
Yeah. I've had, well, and sometimes it's because the batteries are dead, or sometimes it's because they just aren't very good.
They're programmed to turn off after a period of time. And
And
so
that's
even if you're
why
squeezing it, it's somehow not activating. So I think the dial one is probably better, but
if you're gonna do and really if you're gonna do any clinical work and you really want to be a top-notch clinician, get good equipment to do some of those tests. It doesn't have to be expensive, but get good, reliable equipment that odds are good you don't have to continue to plug in all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, get the old dial. It's really good. It works
Yeah.
well. Like I said, mine's fire engine red, so it's cool and patients think it's awesome. So
Do you have any more tips or tricks or comments on HRV from a
well, as far as going
standpoint?
with that, so on its own, no, not really. I think that's kind of a nutshell on how to understand it, what we're looking at, but
Hmm.
know that it is really only kind of measuring one component of that autonomic nervous system, and you
Okay.
might be missing the boat on what that sympathetic system is doing. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I think just like anything else, I'd like to have more than one test to measure an entire system. If you're only doing
Hmm.
HRV as your autonomic assessment in your clinic, you might be missing the boat. So adding the 5 minute blood pressure test, the 5 minute exertional hand grip test, if you
Hmm.
really want to look it up in the literature, it's there. Again,
Okay.
you'll see some people say 16 millimeters of mercury is fine, but again, they need to sustain that from minute 3 to minute 5.
Okay. I wish I had someone who could do that on me. That's right.
It's hard to do it on your own unless you have an
Yeah,
automatic blood pressure
it's
cuff
true. An
device that you
automatic one.
trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to
All
have one
right.
that you trust. I've had those, and some of them are good and some of them aren't, you know.
Hmm.
But I think HRV, just like anything, it's a very useful biomarker, and again, it's something if you are wanting to trial something like a ketogenic diet or fasting or bringing carbs back online or things like that, or if you want to trial how my regimen of pro-saccades biased 3 to the left and 2 to the right is working to get my frontal lobe activated in a more
Okay.
symmetrical and appropriate fashion.
Yep.
It's a great way to check that. Absolutely. But
Yep.
again, the measurement that's most accurate is one that you do consistently, and ideally it's that first in the morning assessment.
Okay. I'll have to do that one, man. Mine's, I mean, mine's all night. I'm pretty sure it'll be what it is. because I've been
I
looking
would
at for
imagine
over a
it's
year,
from
probably two
well,
years at
and
this
that's the
point.
thing too. You've got a year's worth of data that has tons of statistical power in it on its own.
Yeah.
You can probably figure out what it is like right when you wake up
Hmm.
and use that number.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to Fogo, so I'll break my fast tonight, but the bar menu at Fogo, not the all you can eat part. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna get the bone, the ribeye, or the rib bone. It's called the bone, and it's just rib meat. And
stellar.
then the quejo asado, I'm sure I'm not saying that name right, but it's like bread cheese that they grill up and cut it
Yeah,
so
yeah.
warm and delicious. Anyway,
You know
um,
things I like too, the picanha
yes, lamb.
and
The lamb picanha is what I like.
the lamb is out of sight
Mm.
for me. And I don't mind the grilled pineapple.
Yeah, it's a little too sugary, but I
Yeah.
could see. Trust me, sugar. I understand sugar. It's not that I don't like
Yeah.
it, but yeah, that grilled
That's
pineapple.
Jen's like number one favorite thing is bring the pineapple around again. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I'm ribeye and lamb is what I ask for the most.
Ribeye for me, yeah, and picanha.
The other thing I
And
was thinking, because we were talking about you said bringing carbs back in. I think what people screw up with things like the carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet is too much protein and not enough fat. Somebody else did
because
a
you need a
video
fuel
on this,
source,
which I have
absolutely.
found for myself too. I do my period like will skip if I'm too high protein and too low fat, and it's
Sure.
not even like a dramatic difference for me. But if I moderate my protein and I have more fat, I'm more normal. But
Well,
so
what's
somebody,
your how do you decide how to regulate your fat? Or what do you do? What do you do? So what
if
would
my
an
ratio is 1 to 1
ideal
or 2 to 1, because
okay,
technically three to
2 to 1
one,
protein to fat?
no, 2 to 1 fat to protein. The protein
Okay.
is the lower number. The fat.
Calories or grams?
So this is on percentage of your thing in
Okay.
in
Caloric
grams.
composition.
So if I said calories, it would be like 80/20 if I'm going to say
Okay.
calories, but it's grams. So 1 gram to
Mostly
two
fat.
grams. Technically, ketogenics more up into the 1 to 3 gram.
Okay.
And that one you dictate by your ideal, your muscle mass, basically your ideal body weight, and
Sure.
doing the equation per kilogram, zero point 0.7 to, it's zero point 0.7 to 1.0, I believe, per gram. I'm sorry, for per pound. The
Per
kilogram is
pound.
like 1.6 to 2.2 or something like that. I don't have that memorized. I always have to look at it. But
2.2046.
yeah, so you figure out that number and then you figure out your fat grams based on the other end of it. And it could vary for me beginning of my cycle, second half of my cycle, what I
Sure.
do better with. But I have definitely, if I go too much protein, I do not do as well. I have to moderate. And so everyone's like, "Oh, I'm eating this much protein," drives me nuts. And then they'll show that they're eating um bread and it has 9 grams of protein. I'm like, what is protein? Protein is the amino acids that you need to make protein. Bread does not have any of that. It might have some, but not enough.
They're
And
probably fortifying it with some whey protein or something to call it protein
not
bread,
even that.
keto
And
bread or
it's
whatever.
there may be some like that, but that's not, it's the weight of the nitrogen. That's what the protein label is telling you. The weight of the nitrogen from amino acids, not the ones that you necessarily need, not
Right.
the complexity and the diversity. Anyway,
Yeah.
I get a little irritated watching these
No, that's good
girls.
because a lot of
Here's my
people don't know that.
160 grams with my collagen. I'm like, that's not a complete protein.
Call
So, anyhow, HRV in general.
super good biomarker. I mean,
Yeah,
again, it's like again working with Dr. Nelson. I think it's super great, but just like I think the take home, if you've listened to me enough, and if you've been here and you're going to continue to be here with us, you're going to go one test does not make an exam.
correct.
That's the
Yep.
take home I think you're going to
Yeah,
get from me is I
yeah.
get this all the time when I get a referral from a general practitioner or chiropractic. I'll get like one test that they'll do. They're like CLA still makes a device that'll measure HRV and it'll do the thermography and some surface EMG on the spine and
Hmm.
they'll send me some of those findings and it's like
What do you do
thank
with it?
you, thank you
Yeah.
for something for sure. And yeah, what are you doing with it? That's the thing.
Hmm.
I've got some docs who are really pretty good with it out in the middle of Nebraska that I've worked with enough. And it's like,
Hmm.
one, she'll she kind of knows it's like, well, if I see this, I know I'll check the blood. She's started doing the blood pressure test in her clinic and things like that
Mm-hmm.
now, and she'll tweak her treatment strategies. It's really cool. So she doesn't have to call me as much as she used to because
Yeah,
she's like, you
doing it.
know, she's gotten into the literature and really because she's in the middle of Nebraska. It's like, you got to go 3 hours to see McLaren or
Hmm.
we'll figure it out.
Yeah. I want to
Got a lot
create,
of resources where she is.
I need to create a present 2 hour presentation on cerebellum. And I'm wondering, I'm like, I wonder if that could be a good way to bring that test in to just talk about it so that people understand. Because I don't think the average chiropractor, and this is no offense to average chiropractor, I'd probably say the average MD as well,
You could say
do
the
not
average
understand the difference
healthcare
and
provider.
how sympathetic, parasympathetic work,
I
and
think you
how
could
it relates
probably
to how they're diagnosing and treating.
You could probably say that about the average neurologist, honestly.
Yes,
I think a
correct.
lot of and I've heard that from neurologists. It's like I don't understand this system that well. And it's hard to specialize in because what you have in your tool chest as a medical neurologist is medicines that affect neurology.
Hmm.
And the problem is with you have other medicine, you have medicines, definitely, right? But you have medicines and you have procedures. And the problem is there are not a lot of medications you have that can stimulate a sympathetic nervous system.
Hmm.
Most of those are
And then
medications that
it's
are
under
designed to
control.
suppress it.
Even if you are doing that, it's not controlled. How do
It's
you, you
it's
can't shut it
very
off right away. Whereas if you
it's
do it
very
from a physical
chaotic.
standpoint, you can make change like quick.
They're not doing a lot of things that specifically stimulate. Most of the medications they're using are suppressive of the sympathetic system. Beta adrenergic blockers are
Hmm.
the most common things that are prescribed for POTS patients or a lot of cardiovascular patients or things like that. You get a
Yeah.
beta blocker or you get an ACE inhibitor, which again has a similar effect to the beta blocker of inhibiting the sympathetic nervous system output.
Hmm.
So again, for
So then they
somebody,
get brain fog. They're like, I don't know what's going on. I can't.
yeah,
Yeah, you have no fuel delivery to your brain.
well, and they already don't. So for somebody like we talked about who can't dilate those pupils already
Yeah.
and has, they get a high heart rate because they can't compensate in other ways. So you put them on metoprolol or another beta blocker, which is again, this is a commonly prescribed medication. I'm not saying do or don't. It's not
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
scope of
Yeah.
practice to recommend or
What you said.
disrecommend medications.
Yep.
Um, that being said, they're being given this because the high heart rate freaks them out and it causes nervous reactions and limbic reactions again, and all these
Yes.
kind of things we talked about.
Yep.
So they'll suppress the high heart rate, but that doesn't work with the system that is causing the high heart rate to happen in the first place because they aren't getting an activation of the exercise pressor response to drive blood to the brain, which is under control of the vestibular system being right with gravity and the sympathetic system interacting with it, and so on and so forth. So you can't give a medication that drives the vestibular inputs into the exercise pressor response specifically.
Hmm.
So they just don't want to do it because it's hard or it's one of those things that's hard to quantify. Or you get like
Yep.
Dr. Kaiser and you've got a continuous blood pressure monitor and some of these other really specialized
Yeah.
things that you can base a treatment off of. A
I
lot of
need to
people
go
don't have those
shadow him
stuff.
and see what he's doing because I just am like in awe, I'm sure, with what
Great,
he's
yeah.
doing.
He's
Yeah.
fabulous.
I
Absolutely.
like I feel like there are a few leaders that I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. Schmo, Kaiser, and Traster are up there for me for
Yeah, all these
innovation, I
people are
guess I would
really
say.
good.
I feel like
They're really good instructors. They're
mhm.
all Carrick faculty as well.
They care
Um,
very much.
what's that?
They care. They care
Oh,
about the
and
doctors
that's
learning, about the patients getting the help,
yeah.
and it's no ego. It's all
And they're
caring. I like that.
and they update their clinics with the I Schmo's clinic is it's in Minnetonka, Minnesota, and it's kind of what I call functional neurology Disney World.
Yeah, Harry Potter land.
He's very
Mark
much
Pick
what the
out here
top,
used to we would call Harry Potter because I think he has a bunch of wood and stuff in his.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's very much he's generally one of the first people to have a new piece of tech if it's out there and it's
Hmm.
good.
Hmm.
So yeah, if you get an opportunity to go to his clinic, absolutely.
Yeah.
That he's got a class coming up in August. I won't get to go, but
Yeah.
I've been to it already, and I'm like I want to go again because I want to see things that I missed, but I want to let somebody else have the seat that doesn't get to go
Yeah.
so they can experience it. But again, his clinic is just wonderful, and
Okay.
And he's a wonderful person as well,
Yeah.
absolutely, and a great clinician, just like the others you spoke of, and pretty much anybody we bring up, they're
Hmm.
fabulous people.
Hmm.
So yeah, again, I will say it until the cows come home. I am Carrick trained. I will go to the ends of the earth for Professor Carrick,
Hmm.
and those of our brethren who have trained with him as
Yep.
well. If you can't if you don't know what to do, find a Carrick trained person that's in your area and get to working with them. And what'll happen is if they don't know this stuff, they know somebody who does,
Yes.
and there's a dialogue out there where we all talk and work together. We've got the
Yep.
forum that you mentioned where we can talk. A lot of us know each other and we'll call each other when we're not sure
Hmm.
as well. So
Yeah, you're my
find a
go-to.
trained
You're
person.
my go-to on all things. Yeah.
Uh, Humbly likewise.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
Okay. I'm gonna